Perfect. If you've been a fan for any number of years, you know our next guest. He's been the voice of the Hornets since the inaugural season in 1988. You can hear him calling every Hornets game this season on WFNZ 102.5 FM. The one, the only, Steve Martin. Steve, welcome into Locked On Hornets.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
Welcome in, Steve. David Walker here. It's great to talk to you. We have been looking forward to this for a long time, and we wanted to just get your take on the team. You may know this team better than anyone not named Steve Clifford, but did you expect them to jump out of the gate to that 8-3 start?
No, I really didn't, because I thought really every year they seem to have to change 3 or 4 people on the club, and of course they lost Al Jefferson, they lost Courtney Lee, and several, and of course Jeremy Lin. So you got to introduce 3 new characters who are going to play a key role either in the top 5 or the top 8 of the club. And I just didn't really think that they get off to a great start, but I think Kemba Walker took care of that. Cody Zeller was a surprise. Nick Batum did his thing. And I think the ancillary pieces that they've added have all helped, especially Marco Bellinelli. He's stepped up, and in the years that he's played his best basketball, he's averaged close to 10 points a game, and they were with San Antonio and with Chicago. So I think this is a situation that he feels very, very comfortable in, and he's contributing quite a bit lately. He had 22 against New Orleans on Saturday night.
Steve, thank you again for joining. This is Justin Thomas here. We actually spoke this morning. So thank
yes,
you.
We did.
Oh, yeah. So, I'm just glad you remembered. That makes me feel good.
Hey, Justin, me too.
See, we're both on the same page here. So the Hornets got off to this great start of the season, franchise best. They've dropped 2 in a row, and things aren't looking too great at the moment. How much of fatigue and injuries a factor, and how much can they control these things?
Well, every team is plagued by injuries. The team the Hornets played last night, the Memphis Grizzlies, they've got their share. Chandler Parsons is out, and then they lost James Ennis early on in the ball game. So everybody's got to play through them. I think on a team where you have so many new pieces, when you have guys who are going to be out, it does disrupt the continuity. This team has had somebody out of their top 8 players in every game since the start of the season. Frank Kaminsky missed the first 2. Cody Zeller's missed the last 2. And they've had one guy in their top 8 who's been out in each one in between. So that's been a little bit of a problem as far as continuity is concerned. The other thing really that has been amazing about this team, or maybe not amazing, but it's I don't know if this is a role that a coach wants to put himself into, but on 9 occasions in the 13 games, the Hornets have trailed at least by 10 points each time, and on 7 of the occasions they've come back to win, or 6 of the occasions they've come back to win. So that means only 2 games have they either let wire to wire or got the lead early in the game and held on to it. So that taxes your team after a while, and I think it kind of puts a heavy responsibility on the shoulders of Kemba Walker, who is your primetime player when it comes to the fourth quarter.
Joined now by voice of the Hornets, Steve Martin. Steve, you mentioned Kemba Walker earlier, and he's been a huge part of those 6 comebacks. For the second straight year, he's made significant strides in his game. His 20-point game streak did get snapped last night, but he's still scoring 24.7 points, shooting above 46 from the field and above 41 from 3. People are writing about Kemba left and right now. Are there any differences you've seen in this season's development over last season's leap?
I think really the big improvement with Kemba came last year, and he's kind of taken what he improved on last year and has probably put it more to the forefront because he's more familiar with a guy like Nick Batum. And Batum's presence helps him because in the past, Kemba had to start a possession, and then when guys didn't want to shoot or out or whatever, they'd give it back to Kemba with 3 on the shot clock, and that usually doesn't help your shooting percentage at all. But now the ball is distributed differently. Nick Batum is dueling with Kemba for leading the team in assists, and many of those assists go in the direction of Kemba Walker. So he gets the ball in different times of the possession, more favorable to him being able to get a better percentage shot. Doesn't have to rush each the shot clock. And so his percentages go up. And he's made a small change in his shooting form that was Bruce Kreitzer, the assistant coach who's in charge of shooting for the Hornets, has really helped him with that. And so in the second year of that, that's really improved him. Plus, he got to take some time off this summer because he was still recouping that knee surgery that he had to clean things out. So sometimes that can be a blessing. It can keep you it can keep you from overworking in the off season. And so he got just right amount of rest and was able to come back and really play significantly better than we've seen him in past years. And I don't know if he's on a mission or not, but the thing is, there are players in this league that, can give you points in periods 1, 2, and 3. But when the game is on the line in the fourth quarter, they're not there to finish. Kemba's not one of those.
No.
Last year, he led the NBA in late and close points. That's, your team within 4, and in the last 2 minutes of play, he scored 83 points in those situations. Kemba knows how to finish a game, and he wants the ball in his hands when the ball game comes down to that last possession. And there's nobody on this team that's better than Kemba Walker in that regard.
Yeah, it's nice to see Kemba, certainly from a Hornets fan's perspective, do that. A guy who had success in college, came into the NBA, has been in for a while. A lot of people said he never would make that jump. Another guy the Hornets have that had success in college, was a 4-year player, and who now is having some success in his second year is Frank Kaminsky. Steve, especially last night, he was a force last night, kept him in that game. But his season has been a bit of a roller coaster. He's starting to show signs of confidence down low and maybe asking for the ball a little bit more. Do you see him becoming maybe that force off the bench offensively that they're looking for, or even developing maybe a larger role?
I think a larger role may be in store for Frank. Maybe not this year, or maybe not in the immediate future, but maybe somewhere after All-Star break. It's going to be interesting to see how he comes out tomorrow night. This is a young man who, the thing I like about Frank, and I think you find this in any player who doesn't come out after his first year of college and goes directly into the pros. Frank stayed all 4 years at Wisconsin. His body matured, his skills matured. He matured being in the spotlight, going to a national championship game. And that really works wonders for you when you get in the NBA and so many things are thrown at you, plus the responsibility of, you're not taking care of everywhere you go. You kind of have to make decisions for yourself. So Frank's got all of that stuff out of the way last year. And I think those type of guys succeed more over the long run. The best example I can find is Tim Duncan. Tim Duncan was a 4-year guy at Wake Forest, number 1 pick in the draft in 1997, I think, or 96. And, it had a glorious 20-year career and was a totally developed, ready-to-play pro. And Frank Kaminsky comes close to that, and he gets better and better each time out.
Steve, last year, Marvin Williams had the best year of his career. He was shooting the lights out, had career averages across the board. This season, he's played well, but he hasn't shot the ball extremely well. I believe I came across a stat that he's 7 of 38, for his last shot attempts. Is there a reason of concern right now with Marvin's shooting woes?
I think last night was probably the tip of the iceberg. I think not the tip of the iceberg, but probably the worst performance for Marvin all season.
Oh,
Marvin does a lot of things for you. Shooting is a luxury, but he does it well. And if you look at his 3-point shooting over the last 3 years, it's climbed considerably from something like 75 threes to close to 90 threes. And then last year, he had a tremendous season with 152 threes as the Hornets kind of changed their offensive philosophy. But Marvin is a smart enough player and a skilled enough player where he's the second leading rebounder on the team right now to Michael Kidd-Gilchrist. He can block shots. He can get assists. He can get to the foul line. And when his shot isn't going well out from the 3-point arc or out of his field goal percentage isn't going well, usually he can get himself to the line and do those things, get 8 or 9 points off the line, and you're doing okay. So Marvin will get back to it. His shot will start to fall, and he'll find his shots in this offense because that's what it's all about. And he should get a lot of open looks because this is a Hornets team that's built on the fact that the ball must hit the paint before it comes back out to hit a 3-pointer. And usually, if you can reverse the ball twice, you'll find an open shot, and the Hornets are pretty good at doing that.
And Steve, you've been around the league for a long time. I'm sure you've seen plenty of players, not only with the Charlotte Hornets, but other teams, go through these types of shooting slumps. What's the general wisdom on fighting through that kind of slump?
You just kind of keep quiet and you move about your business. And as a coach, he's going to be the last guy to remind him. And he's probably not going to change his routine. Marvin will still find himself in the starting lineup. He'll still probably get a representative amount of minutes. And you just have to exercise a lot of patience, and they'll come back with it. Because Marvin probably, we have three guys in particular this year with the Hornets who have worked extraordinarily hard in the off season. And Marvin kind of set this example 2 years ago. And he said to me, I'm not getting any younger. I mean, I'm just my 12th year in the league. So I got to do a lot of things to get this machine rolling. And so they had to spend an awful lot of time in the off season on the court. Jeremy Lamb is another one who has done that, and Michael Kidd-Gilchrist. You will go into the Hornets practice facility, and I don't care what day you pick, whether it's in May, June, July, August, one of those three will be there, probably all three at the same time. So their dedication to their work and their craft really speaks well of their role with the Hornets, and it's paid off for all of them.
See, that's what I keep telling Doug, Steve. I say he's coming back. He's Marvin. He's an old guy. He's just loosening the gears there.
Wait a minute. Don't embarrass me in front of Steve Martin. You know we haven't argued about that. Sorry, Steve.
Here was Steve Martin, voice of the Hornets and voice of the Charlotte NBA basketball team for years and years. Steve, while we have you here, we want to take just a brief trip down memory lane if we could. Going back to when the Hornets left town, did you think that was the end of the NBA in Charlotte?
I really thought so because, at the time, I mean, there's never an example of a team leaving a city and then a franchise coming back. There aren't many, if there are any, but I don't think there are any, really. And especially not in my time in the league, which is now in its 29th year. So for that to happen is incredible. So I thought, when the Hornets left and went to New Orleans, and I went with them, I said, okay, that's it. And then what was happening at the time here in Charlotte was that, of course, the Carolina Panthers were in their 7th or 8th year, and they'd already had a great deal of success as an expansive franchise in the NFL. And they'd kind of taken the city over, like the NFL tends to do wherever it goes. I mean, it eats up all the oxygen. So, we kind of thought when we left for New Orleans that would be it, and I was surprised. Of course, the terms of this town leaving, the angst against the ownership, the previous ownership. I think the NBA thought that Charlotte was a market that they wanted to come back to, and thus they brought the Bobcats here. And then the Bobcats called me while I was in New Orleans and asked me if I might consider coming back to reprise my role as the radio announcer. And seeing so my wife had moved down with our family to New Orleans, and I kind of wanted to be with them, so I did come back. But I did love New Orleans. New Orleans is a great city, and I wish they followed their team a little bit better, but I do understand the reasons why they don't. Yeah,
so that's interesting. So when the NBA was coming back to Charlotte, it was the team that contacted you and not the other way around. Right. I was. And that was the year before Katrina hit. Mm-hmm. And, so I don't know what would have happened had I stayed. I'd have gone with the team, obviously, to Oklahoma City. But then since it's come back to New Orleans, it's gone through an ownership change. The league owned it for a while. And then Tom Benson came in and the Saints took over ownership. Now, I don't know whether I'd have lasted through that, but I was quite content as to where I was. I think New Orleans is a great city. Yeah. It was a lot of fun. Wow, that's crazy. I mean, you would think that whole scenario, Charlotte, New Orleans, Oklahoma City, get back to Charlotte, that's a great 30 for 30 or some sort of documentary for somebody one day to dive into. Oh, yeah. There's no doubt about it because there's a lot of personalities involved in it. I mean, oh, yeah. George Shinn was the previous owner, and, of course, he had all kinds of problems. He had there was a sexual assault case that he was involved with, and that kind of hardened the attitude of the fans in Charlotte. Now, I don't know whether they would have been more tolerant about it in New Orleans, but they certainly weren't tolerant of it in Charlotte. No. And that forced the franchise to move.
But it wasn't. But what it said to David Stern at the time was, look, they didn't move because people didn't like to see them anymore or didn't like to follow them. They just hated ownership.
Yeah.
So if we bring another team back there, make them throw. And the thing about it is, the thing that's unique about Charlotte, and probably no other city could probably go through this, is to go through expansion not once but twice.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's very difficult to do. You know, I remember when the Hornets first went through expansion. They moved us from the Atlantic Division and moved us to the Midwest. So we were playing in the Western Conference and then back into the Central. And the thought was, hey, and the commissioner told us, he said, look, you don't need to worry about winning. Just tour the league and enjoy the cities and have fun being out
nice.
in L.A. and all this stuff. You kidding me? You know. And then when you look at the expansion draft and where they put you in the NBA draft every year, down around 8 or 9, you know you knew it was going to be a tough road to get back to the playoffs. Fortunately for the Hornets, they got into the playoffs in their 5th year.
Yeah, and two vastly different cities, right? Right, Steve? I mean, the first time around, Charlotte was a much different place than it was the second time around, and that was
it was. The city has gone through an amazing amount of growth, and professional sports has kind of dovetailed along with it. The banking industry has grown exponentially. Charlotte is a major financial center. It's the biggest financial center between Philadelphia and Dallas. There are a lot of, Wells Fargo has an office there. Bank of America, of course, was NCMB, which eventually became Bank of America, started in Charlotte. And of course, North Carolina benefited by some liberalized banking rules and regulations that allowed them to expand their banks and go into other areas of the country. And so with that, Charlotte exponentially grew as a business center, and the population exploded, and you were able to sustain and good enough for the Hornets and the Panthers. The city was able to uphold and stand with 2 franchises and follow them very well.
Yeah, and I think it was a challenge trying to build that team the second time around. How to do
clearly. Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, people. And the thing is that the Hornets initially, when they left Charlotte, they'd made the playoffs for 3 or 4 straight years. Matter of fact, 2 years before they left, they came within. They had a 3-2 edge on Milwaukee in the second round of the Eastern playoffs. They win one of those remaining 2 games, and they're going to the NBA, to the Eastern Conference Finals.
Heartbreaking.
And they're up at halftime by 15, and Ray Allen and Glenn Robinson and Sam Cassell just tore them up in the second half, and then when they went back to Milwaukee closed them out in the 7th game. So they came that close to moving up into the Eastern Finals, and possibly next step after that's the NBA Finals. So,
Steve, what's been most exciting or most impressive about the way the Hornets have rebuilt that energy? They've still got work to do, playoff series to win before the building looks anything like it did in 88, 89, 90. But what's impressed you most about what the Hornets have done to reinvigorate professional basketball in Charlotte?
Well, I think especially over the last now 4 years that Steve Clifford has been here, there is a definite pattern as to how this franchise is going to be built. And Steve is an unusual coach because he's not the type of guy who will sit there and say, well, I know you got these skill sets, but we want you to do this, 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 and this to get better. And Steve's not like that. He just says, this is your skill. We understand it. All we want you to do is take this particular skill that you have and do it as best you can. And we'll work around it, and we'll build a team around that. And that's his philosophy with everybody who comes in. He doesn't try to change what they do or add to their game to the point, that it's something that might be uncomfortable. And I think a lot of guys really like that. And what you're seeing is that this franchise is becoming a definite stopover for guys who feel they either haven't had a fair shake in their career, or maybe they've had some hard times due to injuries or just the numbers game with other franchises. They've got a lot of examples of guys who haven't got a fair shake from other franchises. They get here. Josh McRoberts was one.
Yep.
And there's no guaranteed success after you leave Charlotte, after you leave Clifford's routine, but he will turn you in the right direction. There's only one player he wasn't able to turn, and that was Lance Stevenson. But everybody else, Jeremy Lin, Al Jefferson, as I mentioned, Josh McRoberts, and now Roy Hibbert is the project in waiting this year.
Yep.
And he's on a one-year deal, and whether or not he can reclaim what he used to be as a player, and I think we're going to see it, because Roy's a very smart ball player, and you got to have the right, you got to have the right people talking to him about what he can do as a player, and I think Steve Clifford is that person, and he seems to enjoy his playing time here. If he can shake off the injury that he's got to his knee, he'll probably contribute to this team very well.
Yeah, the transformation has been exciting to watch, and it's been exciting to listen along on WFNZ 102.5 FM. Steve Martin, Hornets radio play-by-play announcer. Thank you so much for joining us, taking a little extra time out here. And I just want to read this real quick to you, Steve. We got a comment on our YouTube live show from Daniel. Daniel saying, "I love that golden voice, so soothing, up there with Morgan Freeman's." So you compared Frank the Tank to Tim Duncan, and you just got a comparison to Morgan Freeman. So it all comes full circle, Steve.
Okay.
Thanks so much for joining us. Have a great night, and we'd love to have you back on anytime.
All right, anytime. You give me a call.
All right, thanks, Steve.
We'll see you later. Bye-bye.
Great stuff there from Steve Martin, the one and the only. That was